Skill checks, something that is a part of pretty much every single Dungeons and Dragons game I could ever think of, really. Your character might be checking for traps, or sneaking through a room, or trying to recall information of some kind about the magical ruins that are there that you're exploring. But whatever it is, there's a ton of situations that can show up in your game, and it's not always clear exactly how to apply the rules and see how it all just kind of fits together. And the purpose of this video is going to be talking about, is it okay that some checks kind of just automatically succeed? What circumstances need to be present in order for that to be considered? And is that actually a rule in the rules? How's it going, everybody? I'm Jake from JNJtabletop, and before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know that here at JNJtabletop, Josh and I are just trying to help you and your friends get the most out of your games of Dungeons and Dragons and any other tabletop role-playing games that our videos may cover. So if that interests you, I would suggest that you go down, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, all those things, and give us a thumbs up so it helps the video and the discoverability. Now, the reason why we're talking about this concept of taking 20 for this video is actually because we were asked a question on Twitter. Master Yoda I am, also my cousin and castmate on Ancient Relics and Hoki Religions, and if you've watched our Dragon of Icespire Peak playthrough, he plays Landor the Bard, otherwise known as the Death Destroyer. But maybe that's a spoiler alert. Maybe I should go back and edit that. In any event, on Twitter, Michael asks, JNJtabletop, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, maybe even a video. I know I'm newer, but I didn't even know this was a thing, and he quote tweeted Dragna Carter, who was doing a rule reminder for 5th edition. According to the Dungeon Master's Guide, page 237, any PC can choose to take 20 on a roll by spending 10 times the average time required for a single attempt. If picking a DC 25 lock takes 6 seconds, a rogue with a +5 modifier can automatically succeed by taking 1 minute to do so. The concept of taking 20 on a skill check is actually really not all that new. It is a little obscure, but it has existed in previous editions of Dungeons & Dragons, as well as other systems that Wizards of the Coast has implemented in the past. So let's take a quick look at what the Dungeon Master's Guide says so we make sure we get things right. Sometimes a character fails an ability check and wants to try again. In some cases, a character is free to do so. The only real cost is the time it takes. With enough attempts and enough time, a character should eventually succeed at the task. To speed things up, assume that a character spending 10 times the normal amount of time needed to complete a task automatically succeeds at that task. However, no amount of repeating the check allows a character to turn an impossible task into a successful one. So there's a few things that I want to talk about when it comes to what we just read. So first and foremost, this occurs when a character fails an ability check and wants to try again. And there are certainly circumstances in which that makes sense, most notably when the only real cost is the time it takes to continue trying. And this is clearly mentioned just to make sure you keep the pace of your game moving forward. Who wants to sit around watching someone roll the dice 30,000 times until they finally succeed at climbing a 2-foot ladder? Like, we get it. You succeed. I think it's actually somewhat notable to say that I've seen Matt Mercer use this on Critical Role a handful of times when someone will ask to do a task that's clearly going to take a certain amount of time, and he might call for an investigation check. And you can tell that he's not looking for, I want to see if you succeed. It's just, I want to see when you succeed. So if someone rolls low, it's like, yes, they will succeed at that, but it just might take them 30 minutes instead of 10 minutes, or whatever the case may be. Again, the purpose of this is to speed up the pace of your game and not waste time on something that is just so trivial it's not worth it. I also think it's worth noting that the phrase taking 20 or take 20 isn't referenced in the excerpt from the Dungeon Master's Guide that we just read. However, from the tweet, I think it's very good that Dragna Carter put that in quotes because it's very clearly implied, because when it comes to anything really in Dungeons & Dragons, the best result you can get is when you roll a 20 on a d20. Simple, right? However, there's going to be a little bit more about that a little later in the video, which I think you're going to want to stick around for. And last but not least, before we move on, I think you always have to remind yourself that no matter how much time spent on a task, you cannot change something that is impossible into something that's possible. And I think that's always something that a DM needs to keep in the forefront of their minds. Players too, actually. Don't stress out your DM with ridiculous questions. I mean, if you have an honest question, that's fine, but lots of players know the difference. Hopefully, that's you. Now, the example ability check that was referenced in the tweet is picking a lock. So I think, just for the sake of argument, let's assume that this lock is not trapped in some way. I do think there actually is a potential consequence worth considering if you're the DM running this kind of thing. If the character rolls poorly, the lockpick could break. I think that's a potential viable consequence worth considering if you're running this. But at the end of the day, sometimes there are pacing concerns that might override that. So as the DM, you just have to manage that situation however you see fit. An example that I do think would be a good one might be, say, studying a topic. Perhaps as the DM, you know that the answer to whatever question it is that your player has is in a particular book that they are studying. And actually, using the rule that I referenced Matt Mercer tends to do a lot of times, you might make that investigation check just to see how long it will take them. I think that's a very good example. And another one might be an investigation check in some kind of a room. If the characters just have free reign of something and they really want to make sure that they are like thorough, like really thorough, sure, it takes a long time, but what is it that they need to know? Especially, I would consider this if you are the kind of DM that happened to, say, maybe lock the continuation of a particular plot point that's integral to your campaign behind the roll of a die. You have to let them succeed here and just have it take a while. But they succeed, and that's really important. So why does this concept sometimes get a little confusing and it maybe just a little, you're just a little unsure of how to put it all together? Well, sometimes people assume that a natural 20 on a skill check or an ability check is an automatic success, much like an attack roll, which is actually the only rule in which that's the case. Now, don't get me wrong, I love house rules. I think house rules are some of the best stuff that happens at your table. It can make a game feel truly unique, your own, special, full of life. I think it's great. But a lot of house rules can kind of not mix and play well sometimes with other concepts in the game, and I think this might be one of them. Now, maybe as a DM, a natural 20 on a skill check might give some kind of little extra added benefit, but it's not an automatic success. Remember, you can't turn an impossible task into a possible one. You always have to remember that when it comes to this sort of thing. This is where I want to hear from you. Is this concept of taking 20 something that you use or have seen used at a game that you've participated in? Have you used this as a DM or seen it used as a player? I want to hear some stories in the comment section, and I want to know, did it speed up the game? Did it make your characters feel special? Did it produce anything other than what I talked about in this video and you need to warn us because I'm giving you false information? Whatever it is, I want to hear about it in the comment section. I want to hear from you. Also, if you enjoyed this video or got a little something out of it, please give us that thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend. All right, so thank you so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day.